Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online Regulation G VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. We are back to the Regulation G format, and to get things started, I wanted to feature the team that won the 2024 Pokemon Video Game World Championships in the Masters Division. This team was piloted by Luca Cherrybelly, and he claimed Miraidon's first World Championship victory, supported by partners like Whimsicott, Fire Ogerpon, Iron Hands, Urshifu, as well as Farigiraf. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down in the description below, and thanks so much as always for joining me. If you enjoy, I'd really appreciate if you consider leaving a like in the video or subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a ton. I am eager to dive back into Regulation G with all of you, so let's just get started. If you're interested in trying out the team, the rental code is on the screen, and there's also an accompanying PokePaste and team report in the description below. This team won the 2024 Pokemon Video Game World Championships, and it features some very powerful attackers. You've got Miraidon, easily one of the best restricted Pokemon in the format, and you've got two means of speed control with Tailwind from Whimsicott as well as Trick Room from Farigiraf. You're also using some of the most powerful non-restricted options in Urshifu, Assault Vest, Iron Hands, as well as Fire Ogerpon. The combination of all of these Pokemon allow you to deal massive amounts of damage and really allow you to threaten your opponents. It's really hard to have good defensive options into this composition, and you can blow up games very quickly with early Miraidon knockouts, as well as positioning your offensive options properly. Breaking down the individual Pokemon, the first one that we have to talk about, of course, is Miraidon. By the way, Luca did a team report and a tournament report for Worlds, so I highly recommend you read that. I'll link it down in the description below, and it gives very good insight for what all the specific EV spreads are designed to do, and of course, as well as Luca's experience at Worlds. I actually interviewed Luca for my podcast with Marcus Statter, VGC Reflections, and he was our very first guest in our very first episode, so if you want to learn more about him and his run at Worlds, I recommend checking that out as well. I'll link it down in the description below. Finally, question of the day. I want to know what your ideal length for videos is. I've really experimented with a lot of different games throughout the years, as few as 2 and as many as 8 to 10, for example. So curious on your guys' opinions down in the comment section below. Now, the basis of this team came from a Japanese player called Arubega, who was one of the most dominant Miraidon players going into the World Championships. It's funny because Arubega actually wasn't even going to Worlds, but his team became very, very popular and was definitely one of the top teams on my radar going into Worlds, and so it's no surprise to see it actually end up winning. Of course, your restricted choice is going to be Miraidon. This is one of the most powerful options that you can have in the format because it's got one of the best base speed stats and base special attack stats, and you have an incredible ability. Your ability, of course, allows you to activate electric terrain, and your special attack is boosted when electric terrain is up, and so the Miraidon just has infinite multipliers. You've got your ability setting up terrain, you've got terrain allowing you to do more damage with electric type attacks as well, you've got choice specs, and Fairy Terra here is really nice for Dazzling Gleam in particular. What's really key about Miraidon is finding positions where it can attack safely. A lot of the times when people lead this Pokemon, they actually often Volt Switch out to get a lot of chip damage onto something, pivot something else back in, and then set up for the late game where Miraidon can just sweep. Draco Meteor in terrain or Electro Drift in terrain can often just blow up and get one-hit knockouts on so many common Pokemon in this format. But you of course have to be very careful, because if you Draco into a Fairy type, for example, or Fairy Terra, or Electro Drift into a Ground type or a Ground Terra, it can really set you back significantly, especially because then Miraidon is often in an awkward spot where it kind of has to switch out the next turn, and your opponents can really take advantage of that. One thing to note on this team is that you don't have Protect on Miraidon, you don't have Protect on Whimsicott, you don't have Protect on Iron Hands or Farigiraf, so if you're caught out in a poor defensive spot where you are not really threatening very much with damage, and you can't very easily switch out into what you have in the back, you'll lose a lot of momentum often. So that's why a lot of the best Miraidon players often can, do a really good job deciding, should I just go for the Electro Drift for Draco Meteor, or should I actually Volt Switch to get some chip and then play towards a late game Miraidon? Fairy Terra Dazzling Gleam was one of the biggest adaptations on this Pokemon going into the World Championships, and people realized, look, I know Electric Terra allows me to do more damage, but Fairy Terra allows me to, 1, have a good defensive matchup into opposing Miraidons, and 2, Fairy Terra Dazzling Gleam is just really powerful in endgames. Let's say you've gotten rid of your opponent's terrain, it's just a generally neutral option that will often be able to do, 30, 40, even 50% to a lot of Pokemon in the format, and if you position properly and you get a lot of damage onto everything distributed, Miraidon can just clean up the game. What's important to know about this Miraidon is that it's actually Modest rather than Timid, and that was an intentional decision. The extra damage output that you get from Modest is really valuable, and basically going into Worlds, because everyone was using Miraidon, Luca recognized, look, I'd rather not just go Timid, I'd rather have more damage output, and with the slower Miraidon, it actually allowed him to make a really interesting play, which is leading Whimsicott Miraidon, and then going Fairy Terra, and then Volt switching opposing Miraidons, often expecting to be slower, since you'll be able to set up Light Screen with the Whimsicott here. So this Miraidon, of course, is not max speed. You'll have to be careful about getting outsped by opposing Miraidons, but it's very powerful. Whimsicott is by far one of the best partners for it and one of the most common leads for it. The idea, of course, is that it can set up Tailwind for Miraidon immediately. The Covert Cloak here allows you to block potential fake outs or just become immune to them, and the flinching specifically, and that allows you to just get Tailwind up very safely. There's so much fake out in this format with Rillaboom and Incineroar, so being able to get your attacks off while not having to worry about fake out is huge. Light Screen is the main tech that I want to talk about here on Whimsicott because it allows you to play more confidently into opposing special attackers, especially the restricteds like Miraidon, Kyogre, Terapagos, for example, as well as Calyrex Shadow Rider. The Light Screen just allows you to survive attacks with a lot more ease, and what often becomes 2-hit knockouts turn into 3-hit knockouts, which is really, really nice. So I actually really prioritize setting up Light Screen in a lot of matchups because it's really difficult for the restricted Pokemon to just like be able to push the tempo when you're able to actually survive attacks that you aren't supposed to be surviving. Otherwise, the moveset is fairly straightforward. Encore, I think, is one of the best tools on this Whimsicott because if you play incorrectly against Miraidon, and often people will try to protect in order to not get KO'd by it, Whimsicott then can take advantage of it, and of course then go for Encore. So Whimsicott Miraidon is going to be one of your default leads with this team. Urshifu on this team is very straightforward. This is just classic admin stellar Urshifu with Focus Sash. Not much to say about it other than one of the most broken Pokemon ever invented has returned to the competitive format. This is a really effective Pokemon in just breaking through a lot of different teams, and of course, like I said, people will often try to protect in front of Miraidon to not get knocked out. Well, when you have Urshifu, you don't care about those protects, and you can, of course, just break through them with Unseen Fist. This is a really good option into a lot of teams, especially Terapagos compositions, for example, because you get that super effective close combat, and overall it's just a reliable option. Incineroar, of course, can be a little bit annoying for a number of the Pokemon on this team to deal with, so having Surging Strikes and close combat to just threaten it, of course, is very, very nice. You also have Ogerpon Heartflame on this team, and this is a really cool option that kind of teeters between both offense and defense. It's primarily on the team to cover for Rillaboom. Rillaboom is a huge problem for Miraidon, of course, because it overrides the terrain. Grassy terrain is really annoying to deal with. Ogerpon is one of the best Rillaboom counters in the format. So you're often bringing Ogerpon to just get rid of Rillaboom as quickly as possible to allow Miraidon to have electric terrain up for the remainder of the game and sweep. The Ogerpon here is mainly going to be clicking Ivy Cudgel then, but Follow Me is also a nice supportive move. As you see here, the Ogerpon has a good amount of HP and defense investment as well, so it'll be fairly good into a lot of offensive options to protect your Miraidon a little bit more. I often find myself trying to prioritize Ogerpon in the Rillaboom matchup, so get rid of my opponent's Rillaboom as soon as I can, ideally, and then Miraidon will have a much easier time. Luca mentioned that he doesn't actually click Woodhammer very much, at least when he played it at the World Championships, and the recoil from it, of course, can be a little bit tough as well, but it does give you a solid option if your opponent goes for, say, certain defensive terras, like Ground, for example, and it's just a reliable offensive option as well. Just keep in mind that you'll be taking that recoil, but for me, I find myself using it mainly to deal with those pesky grass types, especially Rillaboom. To round out the team, you've got Farigiraf and Iron Hands as a core. This Farigiraf just synergizes so nicely with Miraidon, and Farigiraf Miraidon won the very first regional championship of the regulation, so it's no surprise to see things come back in a circle and for it to win the World Championships. Electric Seed, when paired with Miraidon, is just an awesome combination. Even if you're up against opposing terrain, like let's say your opponent leads Rillaboom or Indeedee, you will still override, or you'll get the Electric Seed activated first, even if they override your terrain, right? So let's say you lead Farigiraf plus Miraidon into Rillaboom, while the grassy terrain will be what ends up staying out on the field in the beginning of the turn, the Electric Seed will still be consumed immediately after Miraidon activates it, which is a really, really cool concept. The general idea behind Farigiraf is that Helping Hand allows you to blow things up with Miraidon, right? Helping Hand Draco Meteor, for example, can be used to take care of Rillaboom even if they have changed the terrain, which is really nice. Helping Hand just allows Miraidon to pick up those knockouts even if electric terrain isn't up, giving you the extra damage boost that you need. Foul Play and Psychic Noise are really valuable for damage, Foul Play especially into Calyrex's, and Psychic Noise is really good into, say, opposing Iron Hands. This Farigiraf actually has a little bit of speed investment so that when you're going up against those Iron Hands, you can outpace them and then block them from healing from Drain Punch. And then Trick Room is really nice with this Farigiraf as well, because one of the cores with this team is using Farigiraf and Iron Hands under Trick Room to dominate. Iron Hands is the last Pokemon here. This Pokemon is really beefy. It can really survive attacks very reliably, and it does a ton of damage as well. You've got Low Kick here, which is one of the adaptations going into the World Championships as well, rather than Heavy Slam, to have a reliable, strong fighting type attack. Bug Terra is used on this Iron Hands. You can use other Terras like Grass, Water, or Fire, but Bug is really nice in opposing matchups against fighting type Pokemon, for example, and fighting type attacks. So I often find that Iron Hands is a really reliable Pokemon in the mid game, where let's say I Volt Switch out, I bring out Hands, I Disrupt with Fake Out, do good damage, and then close out the game with Miraidon. I have a lot of mid games too, where I would say I set up Trick Room with Farigiraf, use Farigiraf in Hands, and then once Trick Room expires, use the faster Pokemon to close out the game. A lot of different ways that you can play with the team, but some of my favorite leads include Whimsicott Miraidon, Whimsicott Farigiraf, Farigiraf plus Ogerpon. The idea here is Whimsicott Miraidon and Farigiraf Miraidon just allow you to enable Miraidon very, very quickly. Farigiraf Ogerpon is really nice in blocking Fake Out immediately. For example, if your opponent, you think you're going to prioritize Rillaboom, well, this will just put Rillaboom in a really, really awkward position immediately. Hands Miraidon gives you Fake Out support immediately while also setting up terrain for Iron Hands, which is really nice as well. But one of the key strengths of this team is that every Pokemon is so valuable, and there's so many different ways that you can flex in terms of how you use it. But those are just some combos to think about. So a couple of things to watch out for. The first thing that I want to note is that Miraidon does not love going up against opposing terrain. So if your opponent has a Rillaboom or Indeedee, you got to be cautious and you have to figure out, how do I eliminate those Pokemon quickly so that Miraidon can then hit the field and then dominate in terms of damage and have terrain control. This team has Farigiraf, so you obviously block Fake Out if Farigiraf is out on the field, but I've had games where Farigiraf goes down really early in the battle, and then Miraidon is really vulnerable to getting hit by Fake Out. I think Farigiraf is actually a very key tool in protecting that Miraidon and blocking that priority, so you want to keep that in mind as well. I think another thing to keep in mind is sometimes you won't have a ton of offense out on the field, right? For example, if Whimsicott and Farigiraf are on the field, you're not really doing much damage with either of these Pokemon, right? So sometimes the damage can index very heavily on just one Pokemon that's out on the field, and that can be a little bit scary and something that your opponents can take advantage of as well. I'd say overall, the reason why this team was able to win Worlds in a really high variance format is because it has good tools into pretty much all of the common archetypes that you'll see. That doesn't mean that you're just going to win against them though, right? I actually think Miraidon is not the easiest restricted to use because it is choice specs and it is fairly frail. So if you make one mistake with it, especially on turn 1 or turn 2 of the battle, it can punish you really, really heavily. So you have to keep that in mind. I mentioned earlier, you don't have Protect on it, Whimsicott, Hands, or Farigiraf, and that's something that your opponents can really take advantage of as well. Otherwise, I think sometimes I've run into issues where, for example, like my Pokemon are just getting outsped. For example, like the Ogerpon here isn't max speed, and if your opponents are using Pokemon that are in the kind of higher than base 110 speed tier range, that's something that can be a little bit annoying. If they've got their own Tailwind and they've got their own faster Pokemon, that can be scary, especially if you don't feel comfortable bringing Trick Room into the matchup as well. And the two teams that Luca lost against at Worlds was a Terrapagos team and an Ice Rider team. Obviously, I'd say this comp on paper should have a decent matchup into Terrapagos because you've got dual fighting, and then into Ice Rider, you've got the Ogerpon, Farigiraf, and Iron Hands, all as really valuable tools. But yeah, if you want to see exactly what compositions Luca lost against at Worlds, like I mentioned, check out his report. But those are just a couple of things I wanted to call out. Ooh, we've got Kyogre here, but a slightly new take. Archaludon, a Pokemon that we actually did not see very much of in Reg G, but we saw a ton of in Reg H is now on my opponent's team. Amoonguss, Grim, Lando, Incin. So this feels like it's going to be very bulky Kyogre with Calm Mind. I think Whimsicott is a must bring because of Encore as well as Light Screen. I think Iron Hands is probably necessary. Because of the... I could bring Fire Pond for Follow Me, but... And if we stall at the rain, it actually can deal some meaningful damage. But this to me is like very much a protect the Kyogre kind of composition. Grimmsnarl lead here I think would also make a lot of sense. Grim Landorus is what I would lead if I were them. With Kyle Amoonguss in the back. Moongus is actually pretty annoying in the rain. I can't, like, my best way of handling is probably helping hand Draco Meteor. But I think I need Whimsicott. I think I need Miraidon. I think I probably bring Urshifu into this, honestly. So I'm thinking... Okay, I want Whimsicott Ursh lead. Miraidon in the back. It's Bug instead of Grass on hands, which makes it a little bit worse in this matchup. In my opinion, Kyogre is still kind of underrated in the format, but I did a tier list ranking all the restricteds, and I think like Kyogre is basically like I have is number 6, partially because like a set like this normally is Calm Mind, Ice Beam, Origin Pulse, Protect with leftovers Grass Terra. You're very vulnerable to missing. But they late Landers Kyogre immediately, so I'm thinking like, are you offensive? My expectation here is that they switch Lando out into Amoonguss turn 1, and it's Rocky Helmet Amoonguss. So I'm thinking of Light Screen here. And actually just click Surging Strikes into Kyogre. Yeah. I just think there's no way you ever give up your Landers for free like that. Could be Archaludon as well, but there's Amoonguss. Yep. Okay. Ooh, okay, so it is probably max speed Kyogre, which I wasn't expecting because I thought it would be quite bulky. But we get a ton of damage with Surging Strikes in the rain right away, so that's great. You are leftover still, so it's probably like max HP, max speed is my guess. Anyway, this can Rage Powder now. This is where I wish we were Grass Terra. That'd be so nice. I can Encore you into Ice Beam. I could also Tailwind right now, obviously. Tailwind doesn't seem too bad. If we think they're going to Rage Powder Ice Beam, that's fine, because it would be a free switch into Miraidon. I just really think this should be Rocky Helmet, so I really think it's going to be Rage Powder here. I'm going to Tailwind Detect. Rage Powder, Ice Beam, or Calm Mind is my guess on what they go for. But if they Calm Mind, I just Encore you. And if they Ice Beam Whimsicott, it's a free switch it into Miraidon. And I threaten with Draco Meteor now. Yeah, this is fine. Okay. Works for me. We will lose the Whimsicott, but for a free switch into Miraidon. I think the main question I have here is if it's Fairy Terra Amoonguss, which it very well could be. I think this probably even considers switching out, maybe back out into Landorus. I personally think I want to just go Draco into you, Surging into you. And if you are Fairy Terra and Rage Powder, then the Surging gets redirected. But okay, they just Rage Powder. Draco doesn't miss. Fantastic. Great. Yeah, I think with that Light Screen being set up in this game, and with them leading so offensively, and me leading Whimsicott Ursh, we were in really good shape. My guess is they were trying to catch the Miraidon in the lead. And this is one of the cool things, like, I get to take advantage. I mean, Urshifu was just a ridiculous Pokemon. Like, guaranteed critical hits, taking advantage of their rain. Kyogre just feints the 2 Surging Strikes. Maybe it's just max special attack, max speed then. It has no bulk, which would be kind of crazy. Normally with these Calm Mind Kyogre sets, I would expect, like, very little speed investment, almost like max HP, max defense. So the fact that Surging did as much as it did was huge. Yeah, and they just bring Lando and... Like, they did not lean into the defensive Grim in this one, probably because they were worried about Urshifu, and that's one of the downsides of Grimmsnarl in this format, so... Landorus comes out. I can just rip Stellar Terra here. I could also Protect. Tailwind's about to expire. I'm gonna just switch in hands here. Actually, I want to be careful here, right? Because, like, I could lose 2 Pokemon this turn, so I'm actually staying with Miraidon and Draco into you and Surging. This just covers for Landorus having a defensive Terra, like Water. Since even a -2 Draco boosted by Terrain from our ability as well as Choice Specs does a ton of damage, and so in that case, like, I have Tailwind set up, I just knock out your Landorus even if you defensive Terra. What I don't want to do is I switch the Iron Hands in, Landorus has a defensive Terra, and it's sturdy Archaludon. So like, let's say like in that case, I don't get a knockout with Urshifu onto either slot, and then you can threaten with Sandsear Storm plus. I guess I have the Sash on Urshifu, so it probably doesn't make that much of a difference anyway. But yeah, I felt like that play is fine because even if the Landorus attacks, then we just get a knockout as long as I don't miss Draco, even if you have a defensive Terra. If you protect Landorus and defensive Terra, I guess it could be interesting, but then Surging Strike still does enough, and then Iron Hands gets a free switch in, then I have Fake Out Stellar CC. So yeah. Okay, we've got a Calyrex Shadow Rider team here with Ogerpon, Urshifu, Incin, Rilla, and Garganacl. I'd say Rilla, Incin, Ursh, Calyrex, one of the most common cores that you're going to have in this format. Double Fake Out, a lot of damage, but Waterpon is interesting because it does give you a bulkier redirection user that also can deal damage. And then Garganacl is fascinating here. Garganacl, I think its main values are being able to be really bulky and stay in the field for a long time, and of course click that Sulk here as well. I don't know if that really threatens me too much in this matchup though, honestly. So I do think Rilla lead is potential here. Rilla Calyrex is certainly one option. I think I really like Fire Ogerpon here. Like Whimsicott, Fire Ogerpon, Miraidon, and then one of Hands or Farigiraf. Hands' damage output I think is really consistent here. But Farigiraf is always not like a terrible bring into Calyrex because you're immune to Astral Barrage and you threaten with Foul Play. Urshifu, if they didn't have Waterpon, I'd probably feel a little bit stronger towards, but because they have Waterpon, I'm not as excited about. I'm going to bring Farigiraf here, and there's multiple reasons for this. The first is its matchup into Calyrex, but the second is being able to switch it in to block Fake Out. I think one of the biggest tools that you can have when you use this team is, especially when you're playing like best of one ladder, is I think a lot of times people just, it's hard to like pay attention to all of the different things going on, so it's really hard to like deal with the lead that you're facing off against and then also deal with the Farigiraf switch in on turn 1, right? So it's going to be the Rillaboom plus Calyrex. Cool. Makes sense. Here, normally you're going to probably want to click Fake Out into the Fire Ogerpon here, so I have a bunch of different things I could do. I could just switch in the Farigiraf and just like Fire Terra, try to KO Calyrex. I think I could always Spiky Shield here and just Light Screen. I think Spiky Shield Light Screen is fine, personally. What are my other options? Let's think this through. I could Tailwind, but if I'm Tailwinding, I probably want to make use of it and attack immediately, whereas Light Screen gives me immediate defense. I think this is generally safe. The risk of going for the play I am talking about is getting crit by Calyrex, like, or, you know, they're Ghost Terra, like Ghost Terra Specs, or they switch an Incin. So I'm fine going for Light Screen here and Spiky Shield. I don't think I ever lose too much off of this play. And there's the Rilla pivot, so Incin as a switch in is my guess. Yeah, that's exactly why I did not want to go all in on offense here. Cool. Okay. Okay, Calyrex protects. This is incredible for us because it means now I can Encore lock you. If I'm them, they should probably be clicking Parting Shot now, in my opinion, into Ogerpon. The question is how much they respect Encore. They could also obviously just Flare Blitz into Whimsicott right now. I could Tailwind, but I value the Encore a little bit more here. Encore. I'm thinking about staying in and attacking with both here, but I do like the idea of pivoting Miraidon in right now. Good switch. Okay, they respect the Encore and they switch out. It could be Rilla coming back in. No, it's going to be Fire Pawn. Or sorry, Water Pawn. Okay. So this is a good opportunity for them to just straight up Flare Blitz my Whimsicott. Okay. So we now have terrain control, but of course the Rillaboom can just pivot back in right now. Let's see if it's Parting Shot. Okay, it is Parting Shot. Yeah, that's fine. Both of us have been vying for positioning so far, so it's been kind of an awkward early game, but it's okay. I think now you can bring out Calyrex, but it allows me to just Tailwind. Flare Blitz into Whimsicott there I think would have been a little bit scarier. But I think they've done a very good job maneuvering this early game, so kudos to them. Just Calyrex comes out. Okay. So now I can finally click the Tailwind that I want to go for. And this spot is interesting because you expect Rilla to maybe come in. I do think getting a Draco actually would be kind of nice. And they can't protect very easily in front of us because we have the Encore pressure, which I think is great. If I'm my opponent, what am I doing? You could follow me Nasty Plot, which would be a little scary. You could switch in Rilla. You could just Astral Barrage here. I think I like personally going for Tailwind and Volt Switch. Okay, Ogre switches. Perfect. So the expectation is for that to now be Rillaboom. Yep. And now I'll be able to Tailwind Volt Switch, bring up Farigiraf, which I think is huge. And we get them to commit Terra, which is also fantastic in my opinion. Because I'm not targeting that slot anyway. Fairy Terra. Okay, great. Perfect. So we set up Tailwind. My guess is I mean, Calm Mind here could get a little bit spooky. But I think, yeah, the threat of Encore is always just so good for us. We really want to now start getting a knockout ideally, though. I think I'm actually leaning towards bringing out Fire Ogre here. Because I think I need to start threatening KOs, and Fire Ogre threatens both slots with knockouts this next turn. But it could be Farigiraf. It's just if Farig comes in, it's such a free switch in for them back out into Urshifu, or sorry, into Incineroar. So I'll bring Ogre out here. Okay, it is going to be Astral Barrage. Yeah, but with Light Screen, you can see how much of a difference Light Screen makes in these matchups, by the way, right? So now the expectation is Rilla pivots out into Incineroar. Rilla pivots out into Incin, and then Calyrex protects, I think is the safe play. Water Terra on this. I honestly kind of want to just rip the Fire Terra here. We want to start, like, now start pressuring with knockouts. So, like, what I want to do here, I just think the Protect and switch in, it could be also switch into Water Ogre Pawn, right? I'll Moonblast this slot. Yep, Rilla switches into Incin. We're finally starting to get like a little bit of damage off, but it's obviously still not like a ton. But we need to start whittling away at this. Oh, they don't protect the Calyrex, so that was an opportunity to have attacked that slot. Protect just felt so likely there. Oh, Astral again, yep. Okay. You can see why double fake out cycling is so valuable, right? Yeah, if I had Moonblast Fire Terra, maybe we could have gotten the knockout onto this. I'm not 100% sure. They could Astro again. We really need to position properly here. We still have 2 turns of Tailwind left. I can bring out Farigiraf pretty freely. The positioning is so awkward right now. I think they'll probably Parting Shot. Okay, I'm gonna Farigiraf and Spiky Shield here. Ursh may have been a decent bring here. Iron Hands would have been able to threaten with fighting damage and Wild Charge. Spiky Shield. Okay, Calyrex protects, yep. If you're doing this, I think you have to target the... Oh, it's Taunt. Okay, that makes sense. That's a cool play. To be honest, though, I think I'm okay with this outcome because even though Light Screen wears off and I'm taunted, I think I want to go all in on targeting their Calyrex right now. I'm intimidated, but I can commit the Terra and then double up onto this. It just feels bad to get hit by a knockoff when I could switch in Miraidon in right now. I could also switch Farigiraf out this turn, but I think we want to make sure Whimsicott is able to set up once again. So I'm going to go for the Psychic Noise here, Fire Terra, and Ivy Cudgel. Terrain is up, so I could Woodhammer instead, right? But I don't want to take Recoil, and this also covers for Rilla switch-in or Ogre switch-in. So the key thing here is getting a ton of damage this turn onto Calyrex. Protect Taunt was a cool play, though, because the Taunt would prevent me from Encoring them. So they've done a very good job playing around Encore, in my opinion. Okay. Here's Terra, Ivy Cudgel. Calyrex should definitely survive this. Nice. We do a ton there, though. Beautiful. They're going to Astral us. Yep. Okay. Does KO Ogre Pawn, but that's fine. I'm willing to take that trade. I think the main debate in this game is whether or not I should have held the, like, played more patiently and brought in Farigiraf this turn. Or sorry, brought in Miraidon. But now we get the knockout onto you. It's still a scary endgame, right? Because it's going to be Instant, Fire, Water Pawn, plus the Rillaboom into us. Nice, they Parting Shot, okay. Instead of going for knockoff. I think Parting Shot makes sense because you often expect the Miraidon to switch in there. So that was a huge turn for us, in my opinion. I got a lot of damage and did not really lose very much at all. I honestly think at this point, I don't have Helping Hand active on Farigiraf yet, though, right? I need to stall out the Taunt. The Taunt is actually quite annoying. You bring out Ogre Pawn. Tailwind Peter's out. So I think if you're my opponent right now, you probably bring that Rillaboom back in. You bring Rillaboom back in. I could bring out Whimsicott and then hard switch Whimsicott out into Miraidon. I could also bring in Miraidon right now, but then my C doesn't activate, and I actually don't think that's ideal. So I'll go Whimsicott first here. But they bring out Instant. Okay. Both of us have committed Terra at this point. We really need to get Miraidon out. Last turn of Grassy Terrain. I have Foul Play here. So Foul Play into Ogre is pretty safe. And we want to bring out Miraidon. At this point, our main goal should be to get one more knockout. If I get one more knockout, I win the Terrain War as long as they don't pick up a knockout. I think it's kind of hard for them to pick up a KO right now. But with this, I should at least guarantee that we're able to change the terrain. Finally activating that Electric Seed. Perfect. Okay. They just Ivy Cudgel into us. That's fine. No crit, which is huge. And Flare Blitz. Okay, they might not even have knockoff, or they were just expecting me to switch in Miraidon there. But this is fantastic for us. Yeah, Foul Play off. Great. Taunt wears off. And this is now the key turn, I think. Because I can just go for Helping Hand here, plus Draco Meteor into Incineroar. If you go for Follow Me, it knocks out Ogre Pawn. If you Spiky Shield, switch in Rillaboom, should just get the knockout onto a good number of Rillabooms, unless you're like super bulky, and even then we get a ton of damage off, which is important. But I had to play really patiently in this game. I could still miss Draco Meteor as well, which is scary. But this was the setup I was angling for the whole game. And since they have Flare Blitz, I mean, it's probably... Yeah, you don't have a knockoff on Instant. It's Fake Out, Flare Blitz, Taunt, and Parting Shot, right? Yep. So Rilla comes in, but if we hit the Draco, the Farigiraf should survive the turn. And then 2, we knock out Rilla, and then we just win the Terrain War. Draco doesn't miss. Cool, let's see if this KOs. Beautiful. And that should be the game for us at this point, because you have no damage into Miraidon. Yeah. I think the one turn that I can really point back to in this game was when I went Ivy Cudgel Moonblast into the instant switch in. I just thought for sure the Calyrex would protect there, but in retrospect, like, protecting is still pretty risky because then you're threatened by Encore again the next turn. So I think that turn I could have launched an Ivy Cudgel into the Calyrex slot. Because then if I had launched Ivy Cudgel, would have taken enough chip damage where Fire Terra Cudgel would have gotten the knockout, right? So let's see. Instinct comes back in. We know your moveset, Fake Out, Flare Blitz, Parting Shot, Taunt. You might go for another Taunt. You can Ivy Cudgel into me, but we just switch Miraidon out right now into Whimsicott. Well, I could still lose the game, actually, right? But I think I have to make the switch here for sure. And then Electro Drift at this point should just lock the game because you have no damage with either of your Pokemon. So, yeah. I'm happy to just Foul Play into Ogerpon here and switch in Whimsicott. Even if I lose both Mons, I think Miraidon wins the end game because I just go Electro Drift into the instant slot. If you follow me, I KO you. If you Spiky Shield, I KO Instant. So I'm willing to lose both Pokemon here, and it's fine. Okay. I had to Helping Hand Draco, though, to get the get rid of Rillaboom and win the terrain war finally. So here's Flare Blitz, that's fine. And the key thing is recognizing what are your main attacks. Flare Blitz, you don't even have knockoff, right? So Flare Blitz, Ivy Cudgel, Wood Hammer, or Horn Leech. Rillaboom could have high horsepower. And so like these two just shouldn't really threaten Miraidon with damage. But this was a really long game. We have to be very patient. And even though this team can be very explosive, like the double Fake Out cycling plus constant protecting can make things fairly tricky. And Farigiraf not being able to threaten Instant with damage is also scary. So we just click Electro Drift here into the Incineroar slot. We know Instant can't protect, so I think if I'm my opponent, I make the Hail Mary play of probably Spiky Shield, Parting Shot just to try to lower damage out a little bit, but they're not going to go for that, so here's Electro Drift. That'll one-shot Instant. Beautiful. And now they are going to Ivy Cudgel, presumably. Yep, but we resist this. Perfect. So even if you get 2 crits, we should be okay. So now we just drift. You Spiky Shield here, finally. But yeah, they end up forfeiting. Even if they had gone Spiky Shield, like stall out electric terrain, like a crit Ivy Cudgel's never KOing and 2 Electro Drifts, I think even outside of terrain should get the KO. So the key turn in this game was knocking out Calyrex and then knocking out Rillaboom, but it took a lot of patience to get there, and my opponent did a good job of not getting Encore trapped and constantly cycling in the Fake Outs. And I think it can show one of the scary things is even though we have Farigiraf to block those Fake Outs and we have Encore pressure with Whimsicott, like we have to also find ways to threaten damage because Whimsicott and Farigiraf on this team can do damage if it's super effective or like get some chip damage, but they're never gonna like often get those huge one-hit knockouts unless it's, I don't know, Foul Play into a Shadow Rider like does in Terra, for example. And so we have to be really patient in this one. But yeah, like Miraidon is just such a powerful Pokemon. Like, once we got rid of my opponent's Calyrex, especially with that Helping Hand support, I felt like we were in really, really good shape. And getting that Helping Hand Draco to get the knockout immediately just secured us the game. But it took a long time to get there. Ooh, we've got a Terapagos here. Okay, so Terapagos, Bolt, Water Pond, Incin, Flutter, Landorus. Against Terapagos, what do I want to do? Iron Hands and Urshifu both probably should come out in this matchup. Their team is very specially oriented, so Whimsicott with Light Screen seems good. I guess the problem then is it has to kind of become like Whimsicott, Miraidon, these two. I think dropping Farigiraf in this matchup makes sense because their team is so specially oriented. Foul Play has little value. I'm not sure I want to set up Trick Room anyway. I do think Fire Ogerpon has a good bit of value because of its offense here, but it does make me significantly weaker to Incin. So with the mode that I'm going with right now, what am I weak to? I think Landorus lead plus Water Ogerpon, for example, can be kind of spooky. Landorus lead, Water Ogerpon. In that case, I would probably want to eliminate Water Ogerpon turn 1 so I could Tailwind, Fairy Terra, Draco Meteor, bring out Urshifu, Surging Strikes, Lando, and then go from there. I think if Water Pong goes down, then the fighting types thrive in this matchup. Could be Whimsicott Hands lead as well, but I think I'm fine with Whimsicott Miraidon. Cool take on Terapagos, though. I actually think Terapagos usage is spiking up a lot. one of the best players from Japan, the Japanese national champion, brought Terrapagos to Worlds and got top 16 with it. And that team is really common right now. It's like Incineroar, Ursh, Fire Ogre Pawn, Terrapagos, and it's like a Calm Mind substitute setup, and it's just really bulky, really difficult to deal with. It'll be Incin plus Flutter main. Okay. I don't think this lead is super scary. The main problem is the threat of Flutter just being very offensive and doing a lot. But it should be Speed Booster here, right? Which I think is good. If I had Fergraph, it would have been a good opportunity to switch in Fergraph, but I think I'm down to just Light Screen here turn 1. I'm not sure I want to Terra because they can potentially take advantage of that. They might just fake out Moonblast Miraidon. Maybe I do Terra this, actually. Because with Light Screen, I'm just not taking a ton of damage, right? So I'm down to Light Screen, Fairy Terra, Electro Drift. Even if you fake out my Miraidon, what is Flutter really doing? Icy Wind, Moonblast. With Light Screen and Fairy Terra, I take that a lot better. It's just scary, right? Because Terraing means I become weak to Terrapagos. It also means I don't have stellar close combat into Terrapagos anymore, but I think it's worth committing. So, there's the fake out. Eat up a crit, it's fine. Whimsicott sets up Light Screen, so Flutter's less strong now. Okay, they go for Taunt. Taunt is interesting because it does deny me the opportunity to Tailwind now, but I think it's fine. I'm mainly just thinking I might actually block Dazzling Gleam in right now. Switch in Iron Hands. What's stopping a Draco onto the instant slot, though? That seems pretty free, too. Yeah, I don't mind that. Hands in. Draco into you. Or Electro Drift into Flutter. I think I prefer Draco into Incin. The reason I'm clicking Draco here is because it could switch into Landorus. And I don't care that much for Flutter, I think, because it's not really providing offense with Light Screen being out. Oh boy. We're still faster though, and Draco connects. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so one thing to note about Flutter mains on the Terrapagos teams recently, that it's very supportive. Thunder Wave, Icy Wind, Taunt, Moonblast is a moveset that's actually fairly common. So that may be what we're running into here. Lando comes in. Terrapagos should be their last one. We want to set up Tailwind and then just use Urshifu to Surging Strikes everything ideally. I can fake out here. My guess is... Okay, I think the best play here is probably just fake out and then switch into Whimsicott. And then I can set up Tailwind. Cool. I could have just Draco there, to be honest, as well, and just doubled up onto Lando. Yeah, you see, like, Flutter really doesn't do much damage there. Now I can Tailwind, which sets Urshifu up for success, which is very good. I think I'm happy to just Wild Charge Flutter here and Tailwind. I'm fine losing Iron Hands here if it means getting a free switch it into Urshifu. And then Moonblast Whimsicott, okay. Do I survive this? I feel like I should, right? Yeah, that did nothing. I'm surprised they risked the Sanseer there. And Flutter just faints. Perfect. Terrapagos now should be my opponent's last one, but I've set up Tailwind and Light Screen. I'm mainly trying to figure out how to win this game and avoid full paralysis. Okay, there's the Terra Shift. I can Encore Landorus now to lock you into Sandsear Storm. I could switch this out, but I think losing both Pokemon is also not that bad. Probably Sandsear Storm again. I do have to be careful here. Okay, let's think. Mainly because I don't have Terra on Urshifu, which should be fun. I'm just trying to play around potentially last turn of Light Screen as well. I think I will Encore this. Nice. That actually just wins us the game, I think, because now you are Encored into Sandsear Storm, and I just Encore your Terrapagos. That's exactly why I made this play. Since I think Moonblast into Terrapagos to break the shell was so obvious. Double miss, but I would have preferred Hands to go down there to free switch into Ursh, because then Ursh comes out surging into Landorus while Tailwind is up, and then just Encore into Terrapagos. But the game is also, I think, effectively locked from this. So but yeah, them missing actually works against me here. 2 turns of Tailwind left, so I will just Drain Punch into you and Encore into you. Great, now you're blocked. They miss again. I really just want the free switch in right now into Urshifu. Terrapagos fails Protect. Drain Punch comes out here. We'll break the Terra Shell. That, of course, allows it to resist instead. You are leftovers. Yep. Terrapagos has to Protect here, so we'll guaranteed get the Protect off. Last turn of Tailwind here. You're still Encored. Ah, man, not getting the free switch into Ursh actually was pretty annoying. I maybe should have just switched out into Ursh, honestly. Because they're going to Sandsear Storm again right now. Tailwind's about to expire. Yeah, I'm actually going to switch in Miraidon right now. And then I get the free switch into Ursh, which is what I was looking for the whole time. Okay. But yeah, if Ursh just came out a little bit sooner and they hit one of those two, I can just end Landorus immediately, and then it's a, pretty easy matchup against Terrapagos in the end game. We just want to assume it has enough bulk to survive close combat, even after Shell is broken. They miss Sandsear again, this time on Miraidon. I switched in here, by the way, because I actually do think it's important to reset Tailwind. So with this, now I can bring out the Whimsicott instead of Tailwind. Encore ends on Lando, Tailwind ends. So we bring out Whimsicott. They haven't Terra'd yet, so this could Terra Poison, technically. Sludge Bomb me. Hold on. It's actually got more complex than I thought it would be. Yeah, because they haven't committed Terra yet. I think I'm fine going for Encore here. Plus Draco. There's the Terra. It could be Terrapagos Terrarine, though. It is. Okay. That's fine, though. Urshifu now just beats you. So as long as I do not get full para'd, we should win. But yeah, like them missing those Sandsear Storms just made my Encore trapping, or like Encore locking, less effective because it was burning turns. Okay, they connect here. That's fine. I finally get Urshifu in. Whimsicott faints. Nice. I don't miss Draco either. Perfect. Okay, good. It was just a little bit scary, right? Because it's like, if they had actually hit the Sandslayer on Miraidon, then this game would have gotten a little bit dicier last turn. The idea was to Tailwind and then set up for an Urshifu endgame, but then I may have just, yeah, like, they missed the Sandslayers when they needed to, and then, fortunately, they missed that one on Miraidon as well. But if either one on hands hits, like, I think the game is just over immediately. But it's still fine here, because now I can just close combat into you, Draco. And Ursh is just one of the best counters into Terapagos in this game. Yeah, like you see, we almost just get a one-hit knockout from it by itself. So they'll Terra Starstorm here, but that's fine. Yep. All we need is 1 HP on Urshifu to win the game, so. Nope, instead of 1, how about 2? Miraidon faints. Okay. You got your leftovers, but you're going to be slower than us here. So we just close combat again. Yeah, I think the early game was really strong, right? Like, we managed to get 2 knockouts very, very quickly. The main issue, and like, being able to Encore trap my opponent was huge in as well. It's just them actually, like, the Sandstorm Storm is like missing. I really did not want to switch in Urshifu and let it take unnecessary damage, because I thought it was important to conserve Focus Sash. The idea is get Urshifu out at full HP so that it can knock out Landorus cleanly, and then it can survive an attack from the Terapagos as well. But yeah, I think had the Sandslayer actually connected on Miraidon as I switched in, this endgame may have actually been a little bit scarier, right? Because then I think I'm at risk of just another Sandstorm coming out. I then could have, of course, clicked Tailwind rather than Encore, and Tailwind allows the Miraidon to basically get back up to its regular speed, outspeeding Landorus as well as Terapagos. And then it's a question of whether or not I get fully paralyzed. Instead, I went for the Encore play because I wanted to respect Poison Terra that turn. But yeah, I think if they had hit the initial Sandslayer, I would have just gone for Tailwind instead. By the way, I was giving some thought to the match because I felt like in this position it should have been a guaranteed victory, and the game was actually a lot closer than I really wanted it to be. And I think what I could have done on the turn that I encored the Terapagos and Drain Punched it was I actually could have just switched my Iron Hands out into the Urshifu here. The main reason I was scared was because I was like, look, this should just be a guaranteed win. I don't want to throw away HP on Urshifu, and my opponent hasn't Terra'd. So the main thing I was worried about was Landorus having a defensive Terra that would allow them to survive Surging Strikes plus Moonblast, essentially. So here, if the Sandslayer connects, I think we should just win the game immediately because it's a free switch into Urshifu and it doesn't take any Sandslayer damage. But I could have just switched Iron Hands into Urshifu immediately, knowing that the Terapagos cannot attack for at least 2 more turns. And if we knock out the Landorus, Terapagos is just Encore locked forever, right? And so I think this turn, the Drain Punch here is not actually very crucial on Solo Terapagos. The main thing is obviously just breaking that shell, but there's multiple different ways that we can accomplish that. And I think here I could have just immediately pivoted hands out into Urshifu. Even if Sandslayer connects, I still have Focus Sash, I still have 1 turn of Tailwind, and because this is Encored, I can just Moonblast plus Surging Strikes into the Landorus. The fear there is basically I didn't want to throw the game away if potentially Landorus has like Water Terra, and then they have enough bulk to survive the Moonblast plus Surging Strikes combination. And in my head, I was like, well, I have Sash Urshifu in the back. I should really be able to close out the game with this into both of my opponent's Pokemon. So yeah, I think that was one potential play I could have made in this scenario specifically. But yeah, had that initial Sandslayer actually just connected, it would have been better off for us. But since I had the Terapagos Encore trapped, I think I actually could have maybe switched in Urshifu. And I think the Landorus having a defensive Terra is not exactly the most common either. In my head, I just like really didn't want to take any risks that I didn't need to, which is why I didn't go for it. But I think that could have definitely been a viable play here. Ooh, we've got Miraidon with what kind of is like a Perish Trap team here. Flutter, Goth, Ensign, and the Screamtail. And then you've got Ursaluna Blood Moon. Okay. This is really interesting. Let's see. Frigg is valuable because it blocks priority. We don't have Ghost Terra here, so the trap actually is fairly effective. One thing to think about in this matchup is actually damaging ourselves to knock things out so that they can't trap us in as effectively. Encore Disable is certainly something to respect as well. I think Whimsicott having Covert Cloak and Light Screen is helpful. I probably just want as much immediate damage out on the field as I can. So I think a combination of Fire Pawn, Miraidon. Urshifu. I do want to lead Whimsicott. Maybe it's Miraidon Farigiraf here. I just don't. I really think I need more damage, honestly. So I'm gonna go Miraidon Urshifu Farig. Or sorry, Ogre. Do I want Farig as the last one? I think blocking Fake Outs is a big deal. But it means dropping Whimsicott. But I think that's okay. Yeah, this should be an interesting one. I think the idea is that we want to just pick up quick knockouts here. I think Perish, on average, is harder to execute in this format because of how much offense there is. And so, like, your Pokemon are just less likely to survive attacks, making it harder to actually stall it enough turns. That's going to be instant Scream Tail, which I'm okay with. To be honest, against this, I think I can just switch in the Farigiraf. And, I mean, what do we think they're going for here, right? Fake out Perish Song is my guess. Fake out Perish Song. So I think I want to Volt Switch into Scream Tail and switch in Farigiraf to block your Fake Out. And that way, if you Perish Song, well, we Volt Switch out of it immediately. I get back into Urshifu. And you don't have Gothitelle on the field, so I can switch out pretty easily as well. But this is why I brought Farig in the matchup. To block Fake Out, I think, is a big deal. They could just Protect, though, turn 1 with the Scream Tail. You could actually Protect Fake Out. This is one of the weird scenarios where I actually think that play works. But they do fake us out. Yep. Cool. Perish Song. Oh, just play rough. Okay. Even better. Well, I say even better, but I think I would have preferred for them to have clicked Perish there. I get a free switch in now into Urshifu. That seems fine. Perish is also just less effective because of the Urshifu being able to block an attack through Protect, right? So Instinct could switch out into Miraidon right now. You could Perish right now. I could Trick Room. Surging Strike's Trick Room is actually interesting to me. I can take the knockout on Scream Tail, I think. I'm taking the knockout, switching to Miraidon. I don't know if I love this play, to be honest, because I think I could have capitalized on a free knockout on the instant slot with like Helping Hand, Close Combat, or Surging Strikes. But the idea here is if I bring Miraidon out, I can just Volt Switch out of a future Perish. And they are going to Terra here. My guess is Ghost Terra on instant, but let's see. Water. Okay. This puts my Miraidon, I think, in very good shape now. Yeah, so there's the Perish. Okay. Okay, a Scream Tail. I presume they Parting Shot out right now. Maybe go out into Gothitelle. Yep. But it's Parting Shot into Ursh, which is totally fine. So now you need to get Goth out on the field, right? So it should be Goth plus Miraidon, maybe, is their best bet. Yep. Goth hits the field. I'm going to very actively think about self-Volt switching my Urshifu at this point, by the way. Because it allows me to get a free switch in and KO myself. Right now you can double Fake me out, which is fine. I think I'll just force them to click Fake Out. So surging into this. Volt switch into this. Yep, there's fake out number 1 and fake out number 2. Okay, this is the next, this turn is huge, right? The presumption, I think, is that they double protect right now. We have to be careful because the question is, can I actually win the game with this amount of offense in the end? They don't get a second Perish Song off unless their last one's Flutter Mane. I don't know if I need to knock myself out. But I don't think it's bad either. I'm just worried they actually, like, Trick Room instead. But I don't think then you do enough damage to me, because this duel's not threatening me with damage. So, yeah, I'm going to go for the self-Volt Switch play, expecting double protect right now. It could also be, yeah, switching Miraidon, protect Gothitelle. Ooh, it's Ursa. Okay. They did not bring out Miraidon. That's a cool decision. It should have been Aqua Jet here, by the way, just to get some free damage off. But yeah, this is one of the cool plays you can make against this kind of strat. And now I know your 4th Pokemon, so I know I can Draco everything confidently. Great. I will bring out Fire Ogre Pawn. Let's just get as much damage out on the field now. Woodhammer and Draco should threaten everything at this point. And now I broke the Perish, so yeah, you have me trapped in, but if they click Trick Room in front of us there, that could have actually been very deadly, but that also would seem kind of crazy when you're facing down Miraidon, like a double up into that slot. So, last turn of terrain. I want to actually be a little bit careful here. This could Terra. We don't know the item on this either. I could still lose to a potential double protect. I am trapped in right now. They could Helping Hand with Gothitelle, or they could protect Trick Room. I think I'm fine launching Draco Meteor into Gothitelle. And Terra Woodhammer into Ursa. Oh, they stay in with both. Okay. The only risk then is they protect and then set up Trick Room here right now. And got this bulky enough to survive Miraidon Specs Draco, which I wouldn't expect it to be, but let's see. Yep, Ursa protects. I could also miss Draco, which would be scary here. We don't miss though, perfect. Nice, GG. Okay, good. Yeah, I really wanted to show off the self-Volt Switch play in this game. I don't know if it was actually the most optimal play, but I wanted, yeah, like the option of Ursa being their 4th, I think was something to respect. And if I had actually locked into an electric type attack onto that, that could have been pretty bad, right? Because Ursa just switches in. So I like the idea of using the Water Terror to bait that out. I think that's quite clever. But Instinct comes out. You do get the Intimidate off into me. See, I'm intimidated, so we're back at neutral here. I think I can just switch in the Farigiraf and go for Spiky Shield. I assume Woodhammer KOs either, honestly. What happens if I go for Woodhammer here instead? I think that's fine, right? Yeah. Frigg blocks the Fake Out. I reset the Draco Meteor. Special attack drops. Okay. Warhammer comes out. Oh, it is bulky enough to survive. Okay. It's still fine though, right? Like, you can't pick up a double KO here. Yeah. I guess if it was Life Orb Hyper Voice, maybe they actually would have gotten the double knockout, but then I still think Miraidon just wins the endgame anyway. But maybe it was better to just Spiky Shield there. I thought Woodhammer would get the knockout, so it's good to actually confirm that it's not a guaranteed KO. But I guess because it's a KO after Life Orb, it always is fine anyway. But if Ursa was even tankier and it survived, and I had like 1 HP left, it actually can get a little bit spookier, mainly because I wouldn't be able to click Electro Drift to safely win the game. Was there any downside to clicking Spiky Shield there? Probably not. If I Spiky Shield there, unless it's like, not even if you're Calm Mind or Saloon, I think it probably should be Spiky Shield there just to be safer. I just thought Woodhammer would definitely KO there, so yeah. But now I can just Helping Hand and Electro Drift. Yeah, if I had gone for Spiky, switch in Farig, even if you double up KO Farig, then I get the free switch in back out into Miraidon. I can just Electro Drift plus Woodhammer. But then Instinct could have Protect. So if I Electro Drift into the Protect and then you survive Woodhammer, you knock out me. Well, I still win with Ogerpon. So yeah, I think I would have probably preferred to go for Spiky Shield there instead. But it ends up being okay. I think Perish, like I mentioned, is just really hard to execute here. I think Ursa is actually really cool as a switch-in because it is immune to the electric type damage, and Miraidon's everywhere in the format. But yeah, I think the self-volt switch play allowing me to reset the counter on Miraidon and also get the switch-in into Miraidon plus Ogerpon just put me into a super advantageous position here. Okay, we've got an Ice Rider team here with Electabuzz, Rillaboom, Incineroar, Farigiraf, and Ursaluna. So Electabuzz Ice Rider was one of the compositions that came out of the North American International Championships, which was really cool. The idea is it gives you sleep immunity. Amoonguss is normally kind of annoying for Ice Rider comps. The Ursaluna here I think is a big problem, and it exerts a lot of offensive pressure for my opponent. So what do I want to lead with? I think I'm not bringing Whimsicott into this matchup. They're almost all... Well, actually, it does give me Light Screen into Ursa, but that's it. I don't think it's worth it. I think Miraidon Farigiraf is probably okay here, but we could go Fire Upon Farig, which is one of my leads into the Rillabooms that often will come out. Hands, I think, is less effective because they have Farigiraf, but I think it's still worth bringing, especially with Bugterra. Which means we probably drop Urshifu in this one, which I think I'm okay with. Okay, I think I'm down for Miraidon, Farigiraf lead. Fire Upon Hands in the back. I think the main debate would be whether or not Urshifu should be brought over one of the options here. But let's see. I think what makes this particularly scary is Electabuzz being able to offer valuable redirection support as well as Rillaboom. And I think Ursaluna adds another layer of offense that often doesn't come with these Ice Rider compositions. So it's going to be Instant Farigiraf. I think this is a really, really solid lead option for us, honestly. You can switch in Rilla turn 1. I would guess it's Rilla Ice Rider in the back, which means Helping Hand Draco right now is super free. The question is whether or not they're Fairy Farigiraf. If it's Fairy Farigiraf, you can Fairy Terra here. Bring out Rillaboom Trick Room. Got hands in the back. The temptation is to just deny Trick Room outright. So Draco here and Helping Hand, which would cover for Rillaboom switching in. The problem here is that they're Fairy Farigiraf. Alright, if they are, they are. I think Helping Hand Draco is a guaranteed knockout on the instant slot if we hit the Draco Meteor. The problem is, I don't want Rillaboom to come in, I knock out Rillaboom, and then they just get a free switch it into Ice Rider. A lot of people have been dropping Fairy Terra on Farigiraf as well, so... But here's the Terra, okay, let's see. Is it Fairy? It probably is, if they're going for this. Whew! It's ground. Nice. Okay. So if we don't miss, this means just no Trick Room on turn 1, and I blow up their Trick Room setter. Nice. Okay, that's huge. Beautiful. Yeah, I was willing to take that risk here since even though Fairy Terra used to be fairly common on Farigiraf, I feel like it has since shifted all over the place, and most of the Farigirafs at the World Championships actually weren't Fairy. They actually just Flare Blitz me as well, okay, instead of knockoff or parting shot, so that's pretty ideal for us. you can see the value of Farigiraf protecting Miraidon from that fake out from Incineroar on turn 1. Rillaboom indeed is going to come out now for my opponent, but with that Grassy Seed active, or sorry, the Electric Seed active, Farigiraf is in a excellent spot. Can bring out Iron Hands now. They'll probably fake out Parting Shot, try to get Ice Rider in. I think Ogre is not going to take that much damage here, so I'm content to bring it out. Especially since my opponent's already committed their Terra. And I'm happy to just foul play into Rillaboom. I think with Terra being blown up on Farigiraf on turn 1, like, they went all in on that turn 1 play, and so no defensive Terra means that Ogerpon now should eat Rillaboom and Calyrex Ice Rider up. Part of, I think, you know, the strength of this team is being able to get those aggressive knockouts early, and if you get one quick knockout, it can really open the game up for you. So we'll bring Ogre out. They're actually going to U-turn onto the Farig slot. Okay, so not opting for Woodhammer, which honestly don't mind. I think U-turn into that's actually probably the best possible outcome. And now if it's Ice Rider, you just eat up a foul play on that slot. And there's the Ice Rider. Yep. Okay. Parting Shot onto the Fire Pawn, which is a good play. So I think this was definitely their best play, which was you find a way to get your Ice Rider in and then reset the Intimidate as well. So I think that was very nicely done by my opponent. But I think this is still fine. We want to just ideally pick up one more knockout. If we get one more KO, we win the Terrain War. So foul play, oof, that does a lot. Very nice. And Farigiraf is revealed to be faster than the Ice Rider as well, which is very key. Great. So now, if you're my opponent, you can switch back out into Incineroar. Protect the Ice Rider is probably their best play. But then even if you do that, what happens the next turn, right? The other play to consider might be switching Ice Rider out into Incineroar and then you turning out with Rillaboom. I'm currently at -1 attack. I could Terra here. We've still got Iron Hands in the back. I think I'm fine just clicking this double up, even though I expect a Protector switch. They don't. Perfect. And that just gets the KO. Wonderful. Get a crit there, but I think we probably still KO even without it. So basically in this situation, I thought the only way I could lose this game is if my opponent somehow set up Trick Room with the Ice Rider. So I was like, look, I'll just double up into it. What's the worst case, right? The worst case is Ice Rider protects or switches out into Incineroar, and then Rillaboom like U-turns or Woodhammers. But I'm not losing a Pokemon in that spot either way, right? So I'm happy to force you to switch into Incin, switch into, and get rid of what is the main threat in Ice Rider out on the field. And I figured they probably needed to take a risk if they wanted to win this game, and even if that turn didn't pan out for me, I'd still totally be fine since I had that huge turn 1, right? So, yeah, this is the beauty of Farigiraf into these compositions. I just get to ignore you really completely. So, yeah, you just go for a Helping Hand, Cudgel, KO this, and then Miraidon deals with Incineroar totally easy in this end game. So, yeah, I think they actually didn't bring either of what I thought was most scared of, which was Electabuzz and Ursaluna. I think Ursaluna mainly scared me from an offensive standpoint, just has a lot of damage into our Pokemon, and Electabuzz at least offers valuable redirection support. Like, you could see how good Farigiraf was in this matchup, right? Being able to foul play into Rillaboom and Ice Rider, having this Electric Seed defense boost, so I don't really have to care for its damage as much, and my opponent leading Fake Out plus Farigiraf meant that I thought it was fairly unlikely either Pokemon actually had Protect, and I could use that to my advantage as well. So sometimes with Miraidon, just getting that immediate knockout on turn 1 can be really crucial. You have to be very careful about going for it because your opponent could have a defensive Terra, they could switch. In this case, I didn't think switching was a possibility because there's no Pokemon that takes the Helping Hand Draco at all. Like, Rillaboom would be the main Pokemon you want to switch in, but that will fall to it often as well. If we get rid of Rillaboom, Miraidon is just completely opened up. So yeah, we can just switch back into Miraidon now and go for foul play and then just Electro Drift for the win. But yeah, I think if it were Fairy Terra, obviously this game would be very, very different. So, you know, in the open team sheet environment, it's obviously really great because you get to just see your opponent's items and Terras and abilities and movesets. But in the closed team sheet environment, not seeing that Terra can be a little bit scary. But it was a risk that I was willing to take because, you know, these days, like I said, most of the Fargraphs that I've seen are not actually running Fairy Terra. So, had I gone for Electro Drift instead, that could have been really bad. I think, basically in my head, if the worst case outcome would have been Fairy Terra and then they hard switch into Calyrex Ice Rider, because like I said, I could have had the guaranteed knockout basically onto the instant slot with Helping Hand Draco Meteor. That covers for Rillaboom switch in, covers for Calyrex Ice Rider switch in as well. But I didn't want to do that, have Fargraph set up Trick Room, and then have the Ice Rider come out. Even if in that scenario, I think it's still very playable because then we can just reverse Trick Room, switch in Iron Hands, reverse Trick Room with Fargraph, especially with the defense boost. I just mainly didn't want to deal with the mind game of, you know, do they reverse Trick Room as I reverse it, essentially. So, like, I switch it back to normal and then they reverse it and set up Trick Room once again. So, yeah. Clearing Fargraph, though, I just felt like there was really very little chance we could lose this game after that turn 1, and it worked out perfectly. Ooh, we've got a Zamazenta here. Very fun. Zamazenta, Ice Rider, Grim, Ursh, Flutter, Pelipper. I think Zamazenta can be a little bit spooky for Miraidon to go up against, but one of the key techs that we have in this matchup is going to be the Bug Terra on the Iron Hands, so we'll want to play towards that. Low Kick is going to be valuable. Urshifu is obviously good into Zama because I can crit through. They've got Grimmsnarl here as well, so I think crits are going to be really valuable. I think that the main tricky thing here is they do have Pelipper, which makes me less inclined to want to bring the Fire Pawn out in this matchup. So, we could go... And Fargraph, it's probably not going to be that great here. The main value of it would be setting up Trick Room for Iron Hands, which actually would be an incredibly potent sweeper under Trick Room. It's one of those matchups where actually all of our Pokemon work. If I'm bringing Whimsicott, I have to basically let it fall down very quickly, but that might be okay. I also think this could be a Miraidon, Fargraph, Iron Hands, Urshifu game. The idea is that I don't set up Trick Room, instead I prioritize... Or sorry, I don't set up Tailwind, I prioritize Trick Room instead. With this, I could hard switch into Iron Hands turn 1. Or just Volt Switch out if they're leading Peliursh, for example. Okay, I'm down for this. Peliursh actually... does become a little bit scary if you're... Because you set up the Rain, and then you can Stellar Surging Strikes for a Fargraph in the Rain. And as someone who brought Zamazenta to the World Championships, I actually think Zama, I would give it a pretty neutral to positive matchup against Miraidon. It's not just Zama alone, obviously, it's the support around it as well, but let's see. Grim and Chimpao. Okay. So Electric Seed activates here immediately. I think with this, I can probably just switch in Iron Hands turn 1 and Trick Room. I could switch in Ursh as well, actually, which would be interesting. I also do have Fairy Terra Dazzling Gleam active right now. Huh, the amount of damage that I get from that is honestly so significant that I think it may be worth it. Yeah, like just straight up rip Fairy Terra Gleam here and Foul Play. I'm down. I think basically the idea is if I switch in Hands and then Trick Room, they can Throat Chop me, which is fine since I have the defense boost. So I should survive. But then I don't get any damage off this turn. Oh! Okay, I wasn't expecting that. Misty Terrain Grimmsnarl. Cool. But I think this is totally fine for us. I mean, it's still a Choice Specs Dazzling Gleam into Grimmsnarl and Chimpao, double super effective. That's just a double knockout to start the game. Perfect. I figured they would Light Screen there, or Reflect. Light Screen obviously making more sense there on turn 1, but even with Light Screen, we should still get the knockout onto Chimpao. This works out even better for us, though, because now I just pick up 2 knockouts. So, terrain control is a cool way to deal with Miraidon, but not when you're facing down so much damage immediately. Let's see what they bring out now. Zama should be 1 for sure. And Flutter is the other. Okay, Flutter Zama. Obviously, body press right now is the main thing that we need to respect from the Zama. It's going to be booster here on Flutter as well. No surprise there. I can't protect, unfortunately, with Frigoraph, so they can just body press into me right now. Which is fine. I think I'm happy to just bring out Iron Hands and Trick Room. I don't think I get the Trick Room up, but if I do, we should just win the game immediately, since we'll have Urshifu and Hands under Trick Room. But the idea here is I sacrifice Frigoraph and we'll play the game from there. But no screen setup is ideal, for sure. And they're going to Moonblast here into Frigoraph. That actually gets the knockout. I honestly was expecting to survive that. Let's see if they Heavy Slammed or Body Pressed here. Ooh, Iron Defense. Okay. That is cool. But that's fine. We'll bring out Ursh now. And I have a guaranteed Fake Out into Zama, Surging Strikes into Flutter. And then I can Aqua Jet to finish off Flutter. So as long as they're not defensive Flutter Terra this turn, this is a very safe play. And we should be faster than even max speed Zamazenta. If it's Impish max speed, I think. If they're Jolly max speed, that'll be interesting. And with that, it means we can use Zama to clean up the game against... Or Miraidon to clean up the game against Zama. Here's the Terra, though. So if this is defensive Terra Flutter, I think my opponent keeps themselves in it. But it's going to be Terra on the Zama, which is perfect. Grass Terra is perfect because now you're just 1 Draco Meteor away from losing. And I don't think Heavy Slam will actually even KO us in return. So yeah, they go for Grass Terra plus Protect, and the idea is to just minimize Surging Strikes damage. I don't even have to worry about Thunder Wave here since Misty Terrain is up, so as long as... I mean, there's really no shenanigans that can happen here. They're just going to Moonblast Ursh, but we're sashed here, which is huge. Beautiful. And now I actually... Oh, wow, Flutter does not survive. Okay. A lot of Speed Booster Flutters are EV'd with near max HP, max defense, specifically to take Surging Strikes from the Urshifu. But the fact that they're not EV'd makes this even easier for us, which is great. Okay, now we just want to make sure we don't carelessly switch in the Miraidon and get crit by like a Heavy Slam. So I will just go for the Low Kick into you and Close Combat. And we just wait for the free switch in into Miraidon and click Draco Meteor. Or even Electro Drift if we do enough damage. Oh, hold on. Misty Terrain is up. I just realized that. So Draco Meteor actually right now is not going to do as much damage. How many turns of Misty Terrain is up? Okay, it's the last turn. So we're fine anyway. I don't think I would have played that turn any differently, but yeah, just some food for thought. A Low Kick here and Close Combat again. Yeah, they Heavy Slam this time around. Like, what we really don't want to do is I actually would lose this game if I switched in Miraidon and Heavy Slam got a critical hit. So why risk that, right? With this, I just get a free switch in now. Okay, Terrain disappears. I actually don't think we need to rely on Draco Meteor. I think Electro Drift plus Low Kick should be fine here. Because you can't knock out both Pokemon in one turn with Zama. And I actually could lose to missing Draco Meteor. So I don't want to rely on that. Okay. But that was a really cool tech, honestly. So we'll just Low Kick again and Electro Drift here. Honestly, I could probably Gleam as well, since you can't win the game with Wide Guard, but I think Drift just KOs here. Yeah, exactly. So a lot about using Miraidon ideally is finding ways to not click Draco Meteor in endgames if you can avoid it. Sometimes you can't, but in this case, we were able to actually get enough damage onto Zama. So yeah. But Miraidon, you know, once again, just blowing up the game wide open after a really powerful turn 1 and giving us a huge, huge advantage after a very positive trade. Ooh, we've got a Miraidon, but they've got the Iron Treads. That was actually a tech that Gabriel Gotti brought to the World Championships. Of course, one of the best players from Latin America. So it's interesting to play a Miraidon where they've got the Treads. Treads actually should give them a huge leg up in this matchup, so I'm a little bit scared about it. We've got Whimsicott, but they can just Trick Room if I do that. This is really scary because of Treads. I don't know how fast their Miraidon is either, which is another problem. I think Miraidon Treads lead is what I'm very worried about from their end. Miraidon Treads. What would I even do to respond to that? Whimsicott. Ogre Pawn. Miraidon Hands. I think I need Hands to deal, like... The Pokemon selection just feels quite awkward here for me, to be honest, but let's see. Yeah, I think, like, what I am not a big fan of here is the fact that I almost feel forced to bring Whimsicott to get the speed advantage against Treads and Miraidon, but then they can just bring out Farigiraf. Like, if I were them, I'd go Farigiraf, Treads, Miraidon for sure. Hands and Treads. Okay, not the worst lead for us, I suppose. This is so scary, though, still. Like, there's just so much offense. I can set up Tailwind, at least, which is good. I wonder if I ever Dark Terra here just to make it through a turn, because then I can threaten this with Encore, right? Because, like, right now I'm threatened by Heavy Slam, for example. It just means not Terraing anything else. I don't think I need a Terra Iron Hands. I do think Fairy Terra on this is decent, and I think Fire Terra is very good offensively. I'm just going to Tailwind Spiky Shield, but I honestly do think this may have been a Dark Terra angle, but they just switch out. And to Ensign. Okay, so they didn't bring Farigiraf, which is good. Nice Spiky Shield. They're not going to fake out here. Could have been a Moonblast Cudgel, but I don't know about that one. Oh, and they do have Heavy Slam. That's really bad. Heavy Slam's not that common on Miraidon comps these days on hands, since you run double fighting type. But that puts me at a much bigger deficit. Okay, I'll bring out my hands then. Ugh, that's not good. You can fake out, so I'll fake out your fake out. Question is whether or not I switch out right now into Miraidon. I'm not going to. But they stay in, so they could just Drain Punch, heal back the damage I'm doing. It's Rocky Helmet Ensign too, which is not great. Yeah, this is really tough. Okay, they Drain Punch us. I think Ensign now probably commits Terra. Could be Terra Ghost. I really want to knock out Ensign, so I think I'm going to Wild Charge it. I might even do this. So I'm going for this play because I think I'm already behind in the match. Treads just demolishes me though, and they did. I think they've played this game super well so far. Okay, Okay, we do get the Terra, which is good. But basically, my logic is if I knock out Incin, it accelerates the pace of this game, and I need to take advantage of my Tailwind right now. Can't let them just stall it out. So, we got the turn right, at least. Ivy Cudgel. Okay. Good. I'm still not sure that's enough to win this game, though, to be honest, because they had Heavy Slam on Iron Hands, which isn't crazy. Like, that used to be the standard, but in Reg G, it's actually not that common. Does KO us? Oh, that's bad. I was hoping to survive there. Okay. I'm now locked into... Like, I have to lock into a move with Miraidon earlier than I'd like. I think I just lose to Treads now, to be honest. How else could I have approached this game? They led Iron Hands Treads with Incin and Miraidon in the back from there. I guess technically the game's not over, but I don't see how I deal with all three of these because I have to lock into a move with Miraidon. But yeah, I think Treads is a really, really cool tech against opposing Miraidons. It's the last turn of Tailwind. Yeah, you just protect here. Trying to think if there's any way I can win this. This should always protect this turn, in my opinion. Their last one should be Miraidon as well. So if I Draco and Cudgel you. I guess that makes sense. Did they not have Protect? Maybe they were just baiting damage into that slot. Man, could I have won if I Draco that slot? Probably not, but we would knocked out Miraidon. I guess it's... I don't know how much damage Iron Treads does to Ogerpon is the thing. And the other question is, does Iron Treads one-shot Miraidon? Because if not, then maybe we're okay. My fear here is, though, that I'm the slower Miraidon as well. And the problem is the terrain resetting, giving this that speed boost that we really don't want. Like, I think the play is Draco Spiky here, right? Yeah, it could follow me, but Ogre needs to knock out their Treads. My hope is to... Like, Miraidon survives a ground type attack. It could be follow me, honestly, and win a speed tie. I'm going for Spiky. I don't know my Iron Treads damage calcs, which is what's making this harder for me to play. Okay, they do high horsepower into Miraidon. We dodge! And I'm faster. Okay, we gotta pull up the damage calc against Iron Treads, because I have no idea what the calc is. I don't know. Does it one-shot us? I have no idea. Let's... Okay, well now they high horsepower us here. I might still lose, right? Since that's a one-hit KO. I think I probably still do end up losing this. Yeah. I think high horsepower probably is a one-hit knockout if it's KOing Fire Pawn like that. Yeah. Well, Well, this was I felt like they definitely should have won this one, so I'm glad that the right person won the game in the end. It's like they played perfectly with Iron Shreds and conserved it perfectly. It is really, really difficult for us in this matchup because it resists Draco and Dazzling, and you're immune to electric type damage. I almost wonder if there's a world where I don't bring Miraidon in this matchup, but that doesn't feel right. I think maybe it's drop Whimsicott for Farigiraf and go Iron Hands, Farigiraf, Miraidon, Ogerpon in this one, or bring Urshifu into this one as well. But I did not bring the right Pokemon into their 4. That's for sure. And I think I was expecting a Miraidon lead from their end, so given the lead that they ended up having, Urshifu may have been a better adjustment. But yeah, I think the reality is in a matchup like this, they should be heavily skewed towards my opponent because they have Iron Shreds. And if I were... Yeah, the fact they had Heavy Slam on Iron Hands made it a lot tougher because I just lost Whimsicott as well. I guess Whimsicott in the end probably just wasn't the right Pokemon to bring because it's not like I got much value out of that Tailwind anyway. I actually got no value out of it. So replacing Whimsicott for Urshifu or Farigiraf would probably be smarter in this one. And honestly, I think Urshifu probably does need to come out to have that matchup into the Iron Shred because I just had very little damage. My only way of dealing with Shreds was setting up... They did a really good job because basically I was like, okay, I need to set up this Tailwind to knock out Iron Shreds, KO it, that way even if Miraidon hits the field and you have the speed boost, I can still outpace you. But then they just switched out the Shreds, waited for my Tailwind to expire, and then brought Shreds out afterwards, and it was perfectly timed by them. So I thought it was, masterfully done. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one, so thank you so much as always for joining me, and I hope that I have demonstrated why this team was able to win the World Championships this year. It's still such a powerful option, and Miraidon is definitely one of the absolute best restricted Pokemon in this format, and you'll have to show it a lot of respect as you get started with the format once again. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all next time. Alright, peace.